say that that was strategically planned so that we could give you a chance to absorb that roundabout introduction there. But I would be lying to you. So we are getting it loaded up, and we will be right back to that discussion in just 1 second. Do we have any other questions before we get into the technical roundabout questions that may come up? Yes?
So, I'm in the Mountain View neighborhood, and, coming off of D Street there, there's a lot of traffic in the morning and at rush hours, coming both ways. And it's right now very difficult to get out sometimes.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure this offers any solution for being able to get out.
I don't think it does either. If you're using B Street to get onto Olympic Highway North, heading south down the hill, that is going to be a difficulty and continue to be a difficulty coming off of B Street.
Why not fix it now?
Yeah, it seems like that would be one of your major concerns, because as traffic continues to increase, they'll get to the point where we can't get out at all. There's no lane to get us out into.
That would be what we have C Street for. C Street is the major roadway that you would want to take a cross-traffic turn on. And B Street's not necessarily the roadway that you would like to try to take a left-hand cross-traffic turn onto. So I'm going to hand it back over to Brian and Dana and let them continue forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, thanks for your patience as well. We have about 12 slides that and I do to get through, and then I imagine if you have some questions, but I think you'll see that this is fairly, we'll get through the 12 slides, and then I think the questions will be pretty easy to address at that point. So it's a quick geographic representation of the roundabouts here in Washington State, so you can kind of see we have a spread over our 6 regions, and a lot of these are local agency roundabouts as well. If you guys had thought about why we put in reasons for roundabouts, I wanted to kind of just have a slide, and Dana and I talked about sometimes it's not always clear why lower speeds are the big issue. If we think about intersections, lower speeds matter. If you can get lower speeds, people do better decision making, and that includes pedestrians and bicyclists as well. And so if you can lower car speeds, you still process the same number of cars, you just do it at a much lower speed. Obviously, delay is something we look at. We've been very fortunate. The department is looking at more roundabouts because of the maintenance piece. Signals cost money to maintain. It's something that when you see the bottom line of what it takes from a staff standpoint to maintain signals, it takes quite a bit. And so if you don't need a signal, let's look at a roundabout option. And finally, aesthetically, they look a little bit better, and I think we'll show you some slides to show that. Quickly, I want to touch on the safety piece. We were being pushed like, what kind of safety pieces are we getting out of our roundabouts? And so at one point we did what we called the Gray Notebook. It was a report that we give to the legislature every year. And we went ahead and looked at 9 roundabouts that we had had in place long enough to do a good before and after study. And we clearly saw that we went to the right locations to get fatal and disabling injuries reduced. And you can see that that's an 80% reduction and a 73% reduction on the various injuries as well as fatals. And Dana also, being our state safety engineer, has a fair amount of experience in this area as well.
Hi, I just wanted to touch on one thing. One of the groundbreaking research that was done was in the early 2000s, and it was actually funded by the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. And what that is a group of insurance companies that donate money to do research. And they found they looked at 24 intersections across the nation. Some had stop signs, some had signals, and they were converted to roundabouts. And then they did a big before and after study, and they found a 90% reduction in fatal crashes. They found 40% overall reduction in total crashes, and 75% reduction in serious injury crashes. And so that's what sort of Brian was saying. You just go in one direction, you don't have a T-bone crashes, which are usually not good outcomes, and the speeds are slower. So that's the reason why we get such a good safety benefit.
So one of the things that this particular project in Shelton touched on was what we call compact roundabouts. One of the things that when we see, for many of you that live here in Shelton, you recognize in Olympia, if there's some county, there's probably 30 or 40 roundabouts. They come in all different shapes and sizes and lanes. And the idea was, we started seeing from a cost standpoint that potentially we could look at locations, and Shelton is a really good example of one of these locations where you have a fair amount of pavement, but it's not being utilized as well as it could be. And so the idea, can you fit a roundabout and still accommodate the design vehicles, the trucks? You can get the pedestrian crossings where you need to get them. It's those types of things that we're looking at more. And so from a compact roundabout standpoint, we have about 20 of the 350 roundabouts in the state, about 20 are compacts. And so that's the idea, is what you're trying to do is still get the benefits of a roundabout, but maybe not take the right of way that may have been required for a conventional roundabout. So I want to just maybe step back a moment. When we talk about traffic calming, roundabouts have some traffic calming features. They slow traffic down. But a lot of people confuse roundabouts in general and compact roundabouts with what we call neighborhood traffic calming circles. This happens to be one of the thousands that they have in the Seattle urban area. The city of Seattle builds traffic calming circles. They don't have any really form of what I would call, you don't have any yield signs. There's no form of control on them, meaning they're uncontrolled intersections. You just bounce around these islands. But they're really there in residential neighborhoods to stop speeds. If we can appreciate all of us that live in neighborhoods, this was the way Seattle deals with a lot of cut-through traffic that goes at speed. If you have to go around all these islands, you slow down. So I just wanted to make a distinction between neighborhood traffic calming circles and a compact roundabout. Compact roundabout can be done much, it lowers speeds, but it processes a lot more cars. This is just a small circle with a tree stuck in the middle of a street. It's not the same function as you'll see from these next photos. So this is one of Dennis' projects, and I think she can probably describe it better, that this is something that we did up north about 5 years ago.
So yeah, so this is at the I-5 Slater Road interchange at exit 260 in Whatcom County. So it's about 2 hours from Seattle. We're getting a lot of traffic on Slater Road, so that our off-ramp traffic was starting to back up on our main line on our Interstate 5. And so we went ahead and put in these compacts. So you see they are able to process the trucks. We were talking about the nice gentle rolled curbing. So the trucks can traverse over the central island and function fine. And then we build them about 18.5 feet for the circulating roadway, so school buses don't have to go on any of the raised curbing. So if you think about it, here we're processing probably 16,000 cars a day, and of that, 95% of that traffic stream is cars. So we're not wasting any space on this majority of the traffic that we're processing, and we actually went from a failing level of service to a level of service B. And again, no moving parts, maintenance is negligible, really.
Thanks, Devin. I just wanted to go through a quick number of slides on compacts so you can kind of see that this idea isn't necessarily new, but maybe new to Shelton. This happens to be Northwood, and I guess I slipped that slide in there, so then this is still your slide. I took the mic from him.
Well, when he wasn't looking, I put it in here because this was in my area too, and it's up in Whatcom County. We had a fatal here. It was stop signs on the side streets, 45 miles per hour, and you can see what the pre-construction looked like. And so within the existing right-of-way, we put that. These are raised splitter islands that slow down traffic, and then this is raised in the middle. So I have some, hopefully Logan, the young people can, I have a drone that flew over this, so if you guys want seeing, believing what it looks like, we can do that after we get down here with questions.
How big are the risers?
So,
The 2-inch splitter islands, they're 2-inch rolled. So they achieve the traffic calming, but also are very gentle for truckers to maneuver through the intersection.
and we have a standard plan that's showing you, I know that that's engineering speed, but we have a standard plan that all of our roundabouts have to put these types of rolled curbs in, mostly to meet some of the trucking industry's needs. As many of us know, or many of you that might have known, truckers have had issues with individual roundabouts that probably didn't have this rolled curve issue, but on the state highway system, we deal with, obviously large interstate trucks. What we call a wheelbase is 67 feet, and we have to accommodate them. And the only way you can do that is with a rolled curve. Yeah, question back there. Question again, I'm sorry. This is about the entire state. Any of the roundabouts we build on the state DOT system right now. And Shelton would incorporate these standards is what my understanding is at. Yeah, question.
Are you telling me that you can get a 53-foot parallel roundabout?
Yeah.
You can go back to the Slater Road. It's at a ramp terminal, so it's an interchange. So
Well, I understand the ramp terminals. I'm talking about downtown Shelton.
Yeah, there's great truck turning software that shows us how these tracking pieces, and so that's something that's in the design. The consultant working for the city has run those auto turns. That's what we call them.
So we'll show you some drone footage of the trucks that you speak of, but you can see the size of this is just under 90 feet from the inscribed circle diameter, and it's similar to what's being proposed at First and Alder, but seeing is believing, and we have some footage for you.
And so she talked about Northwood, and then I just wanted to hit a couple others. These are all on, I would call them minor arterials in these cities, so they see truck traffic, but the issue is schools and trying to get speeds to slow down, much like a neighborhood traffic calming device. They put the roundabouts in to basically improve the speed profile past these schools, as well as accommodate a lot of cars and bicycles. So some neat things are out there on the web. This happens to be a live cam in the Minneapolis area that shows a small compact that got fit into a neighborhood, into a street here. And you can watch that 24 hours a day if you have nothing else to do.
Are you confessing what you do on your free time?
There you go. So I have to show this one because I think it's probably one of the better examples that I think fits Shelton's situation pretty well. This is Kashmir, and Craig touched on it just briefly there at the beginning. But this was a fairly busy, this used to be the old state highway that came through Kashmir before they built the bypass on US 2. And if you think about our state highway system, we had a lot of city, basically big arterials that went through these small communities until they built these bypasses. And US 2 was a bypass around Kashmir. But I still see a number of trucks come through here because of the services that Kashmir needs, and it's an apple growing, obviously, fruit growing area. And I watched a number of trucks. I sat out here for about a half hour. You can see what I do with my spare time, as Den had noted. But trucks use that central island, and I'm going to show you a photo of it really quick. It's a two-tiered central island. It's aesthetically fairly easy to look at, and I don't have any trucks in this photo, but you can trust me that I saw trucks take lefts here and rights. And some of them followed the path really well, others set up and just kind of drove over the island. The point is it works well and it accommodates trucks. And the idea that we'd ever build a device that doesn't handle trucks would not be very prudent. Burlington, I think Den is familiar with this one.
This was constructed by a developer. Actually, Federal Express went into this town, and they had a 24-hour processing facility, and this was the best way to move those FedEx trucks around.
How many lanes are you planning for the Shelton roundabout? And then a larger question, is there a number of lanes where the advantages are lost? In other words, back in DC where you have 7, 8, 9 lanes, it doesn't work very well. So in general, I'm asking, is there a theory as to the maximum number of lanes?
Well, and is that the drawings of the proposal there?
It is. That is the rendering of the roundabout, and we are proposing just a single lane roundabout down at that First and Alder intersection.
How about the last part of my question?
And so this is the one where the advantages of where they go to extra lanes. So you had mentioned Washington, D.C., and you can certainly come up with many examples in the District of Columbia, and I think at DuPont Circle, it's got an inner roadway, an outer roadway, it's got signals on 8 legs. It's not really functioning as it's called a traffic circle at that point, it's not a roundabout. Would they remove the signals, never do a roundabout? If you ever see downtown DC traffic, I don't think they're gonna mess with that. You have a pedestrian piece that's in play there too. In terms of the whether or not there's disadvantages. A single lane roundabout like here at Shelton can handle a lot of vehicles. That is probably a third of its capacity on opening. At 12,000 vehicles, you can handle up to 25,000 vehicles in a single lane roundabout. You can move into the 40,000, 45,000 with multi-lanes. Some of the disadvantages with multi-lanes is you have to recognize trucks will straddle lanes.
So is there a theory as to it becomes inefficient to go more than 2 lanes, 3 lanes?
It's a modeling issue, and it's a matter of managing risk. There is a triple lane roundabout in Long Beach, California that was a converted traffic circle, if some of you are familiar with the Long Beach, Los Alamitos circle. It handles, it's Pacific Coast Highway, so it's a fairly significant roadway. It handles almost 60,000 vehicles a day. It's a big circle though, and in retrospect, you wouldn't build a circle that big to have a triple lane roundabout. You'd build a lot smaller. So I don't know if I'm maybe going into too much detail. But
and we're not proposing anything larger than this single lane roundabout at this point in the city limits.
Well, I think it's important to build the roundabout that's right size for the users of the facility. We found some evidence across the nation where if you have, when you have this amount of entering traffic during the peak periods and you add up what the conflicting movement is in the circulating roadway, they've done a lot of camera film, and we found, based on empirical real-life data, that when it reaches 1350 vehicles per hour, it's almost failing, so then you need to put in additional capacity. But then we found when we do add more capacity when it's not needed, there's side swipes and people don't, it's too much pavement and people, it gets confusing. And so it really is important to make sure you right size what you're building out there.
And I may have made it sound like the sky was falling, but the numbers out here at the Shelton intersection aren't anywhere on terms of Long Beach or downtown DC. And Greg, thank you. Yeah, thanks for cutting me off, Greg.
And we have done a traffic study out there to count vehicles, not only vehicles, but also what the truck volumes are out there. And what we found is it's fairly low, and certainly the truck traffic is very low. It's actually less than 1% through that intersection. So we have studied that. We did give those numbers to our consultant to use within this study and the design of this roundabout.
With that in mind, then I have to question why you would turn Alder Street between First and Front Street into a one-way road, because there's very little traffic that wants to take a right, and certainly not any large trucks normally. They would probably, since it's a stop yield sign, they'd probably wait, and they can, hardly anybody goes, except for small cars, takes a right. No big trucks go up Northcliffe from Alder Street onto First Street. If they're going to Pro Build and dropping something off, and then they're heading out and doing a loop out back to Third. So there's no reason to change it.
Not exactly true. We have met with SPI also.
Pardon?
Sierra Pacific.
Pardon?
We have met with Sierra Pacific also, and they do have some chip trucks that run north and south through that intersection. So that's not entirely true.
North-south, that's okay, but we got this traffic hurdle. I'm saying there's no reason to turn Alder Street between First and Front Street into a one-way road for any reason, because if you think about it, we should have learned a lesson from the train running off in Nisqually, that we have one of the few little places that everybody's going to run to. And when Belfair becomes the city, we're going to have a heck of a lot of traffic coming through, and if we funnel everybody up there onto First Street, they're not going to want to they're going to take a left. So onto First Street. So we're going to have Front Street be kind of a little, because it's Highway 3. That's Front Street.
So there might be a little confusion. We're not proposing to turn Front Street into a one-way road.
You're planning on changing Alder Street or between Front Street and First into a one-way road, so you can't take a right-hand turn up Northcliffe. I think that's a mistake. That's what you said at the beginning of your thing. So.
In front of the hotel.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. I think that's a mistake because there's very little truck traffic. I've never seen a big truck try and take that curve to go up North Cliff. Little panel trucks, maybe, but not a big truck.
Well, maybe I can let Brian or Dana maybe hit on this issue, but really the one reason for that single lane that's going off and no traffic entering, it was an issue with the area that we had to deal with. We couldn't get a 4-lane roundabout to fit in that area, that confined area that we had down there in that intersection. So that was one of the things that we had to look at, was the elimination of that one leg coming into the roundabout, because if you're familiar with that area, the hotel and that very large PUD transmission pole that's there, and maybe Justin can say
I capitulate because it's only a 2-block turn for anybody to go back on to 3rd and take a left. So it's a small problem, and if you've looked at it, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you looking into that.
It was really, how do we fit that roundabout in there?
That's fine. I appreciate that. Thank you for looking into it.
How much research has been done on the businesses that are located around where this roundabout goes in, and the business that it stops from?
There is.
My business.
There's, if you went online and said our roundabout's good for business, you'd come up with a very popular study that was done in Golden, Colorado.
It's not Colorado, it's Shelton, first of all.
Right, but
I'm a hotel owner, and I'm a business owner there, and a one-way street there with no access would kill my business. It would eliminate any business I have, which is very little money.
And it makes it difficult for anybody coming up Highway 3 who wants to go up North Cliff, or to me who lives on Capitol Hill, who knows that everybody stopped to take a left onto 1st Street because they don't know that Front Street's the way they should be going, and now I gotta wait for all these people biled, and you're gonna take off my quick little street in front of her hotel. You guys really are not helping me out.
I take that street all the time coming back free. Go behind there. Come out.
I drive that thing 10 times every day.
One thing to keep in mind is we are trying to look out for the majority of the motoring public that's out there. We are going to have, no matter what project it is, no matter what you're dealing with, we are going to have issues that somebody is not going to like it. It's going to be a neighborhood that doesn't like it. It's going to be an individual that doesn't like it. But what we are trying to do is really speak to the volumes of the motoring public that's out there. And when we do that, this is the best option that we came up with. When you look at the other options, that T intersection that we had proposed before was really not going to work for anybody.
Why is it not
So
working
we
out?
accommodate a few to really penalize the rest. And that is what we came up with in this intersection, and really with the constraints that we had, this is the best viable option that we have at this point.
It could be, except I see all you have to do is say no truck traffic, but make it 2 lanes and allow people to go onto the corner heading up Alder Street onto 1st and take a right going up North Cliff and say no truck traffic. Would that be acceptable?
I don't see a major issue. There's not a lot of accidents out there.
There's no trucks on that road going up that hill ever.
So one other thing that we did try to look at with this project was to not exclude anybody from using that intersection. And one thing that we would do is, if we excluded trucks from using that, we don't want to design a project at this point to really cause more problems. So then where do you put those trucks? If you're not going to allow those trucks to go through this intersection, where do you put them? Do you put them into a neighborhood where you're turning off?
No, wait, don't be disingenuous here. All I'm saying...
And really that's what we were trying to do, was really just make a project that worked for everybody. We don't want to make a project that doesn't work and people are going to avoid.
That's disingenuous. What we're saying is...
So it's taken by her hotel and put that business?
You know, one thing I did want to touch on with the businesses that we've noticed is with the roundabout, because you're yielding and there's a lot of flow, that no one's stacked up at a stop sign or a traffic signal, and there's a lot of accessibility just built in with that feature to get to the different places on the different corners of that area.
Not if you make
It makes it almost impossible to
Well, isn't there access around?
There is access off of Highway 3, and there will be access off of this roundabout.
But
So,
the one-way will be going the
Brian, I
opposite
don't know if you can
direction.
get back to that slide where the roundabout direction
I
shows.
mean, I don't even have a question.
Let's,
This one or back to your...
back to the original one.
Where in Shelton?
So, one more forward, please. There it is. So you are still going to be able to access this off of Highway 3 and also off of First Street. So the traffic volumes that are getting through that intersection are not going to eliminate any of the business that may go into either the motel or Dr. Levin's office there through this intersection. It's actually going to be easier without having either a stop sign or a yield sign that would have been placed there to get through that intersection to get onto East Alder Street. So I think we can see that through this illustration.
Why not take a little bit of property away from the deli in front and making sure they can get, so there's a two-way road there? You don't want to take
Acquiring right-of-way is a very difficult process, and we actually did approach Mickey's Deli. We actually did approach Mickey's Deli and asked them for some right-of-way to expand this roundabout and make it fit a little bit better. They were not real interested in giving the city any right-of-way in that area. So that is something that we did look at. And the other thing, we've got some real constraints, and that's something maybe Justin can hit on. I think we were going to earlier, but with some of those poles that are in that area, Justin can elaborate a little bit on what's actually down there in that area. You have a laser pointer? How about if I point? I got a pointer right here.
So all of the electricity that flows through Shelton here comes from the Mason PUD3 Mason substation, and that's over near the Sierra Pacific building. Used to be the Simpson building next to Rosetta Espresso. And that substation is fed from a high voltage transmission line, 115,000 volts, that comes down Northcliffe. You've probably seen this is the tall structures. And it hits a pole that is sitting right here on this corner, right next to the motel. And it makes a really hard turn here. And it goes east to this corner, and then it continues down Front Street to the substation there. And one of the things that cannot move is that transmission pole, because there's the motel and then there's the right-of-way here. And so we are constrained in the ability to move the roundabout. The city is constrained to move it that way as well. And this roundabout actually accommodates an important piece of that pole. As this pole sits here, there's a lot of tension pulling this way on that pole with those heavy high voltage lines. And so there's what's called a guide stub pole here, and this supports all of that tension that's on this transmission pole right here. And so this design also accommodates that pole as well.
So as you can see with the constraints that we really were up against, I think the engineering team of the city of Shelton and also our consultants did a fabulous job taking a look at this, along with our WashDOT partners who really, before we partnered with WashDOT, we didn't think we could get it in there. And really, with the constraints that we were up against as far as area goes and some of those utilities, I think they did a fabulous job getting in what they could to make this intersection function the best possible way.
Well, I think you had a question as well, and then behind you too.
Well, mine was the crosswalks. I was thinking about the test of pedestrians. I've seen some kind of crazy things happen over in DC with the folks doing the crosswalks, which is right in front of us. That coming around the corner, even though you can see through there. I just wonder if, I mean, is that the normal place to put them, or do you need to put them further away?
So the question she had, I can turn this on again. Oh, no,
You need the young people around. But, so our standard is we typically put these crosswalks about a car length away from the circulating island, or circulating roadway. The theory behind that, and again, pointing to the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety back in the early 2000s, but supporting data since then has shown 40% reduction in crashes because of the slower speeds. You have a pedestrian now. Well, let's look at the motorist. The motorist comes to this intersection, and it's giving them one task to think about at a time. So instead of having to yield, they can just focus on the pedestrian crossing. And then if there's no pedestrians, they can go into the yield line and then navigate to the roundabout. And then given that side of it, if you look at the pedestrians, they have a refuge here, so they only look at they have a two-step crossing, which is a lot safer for them as well. And then with the lower speeds, because people will go down about 15 miles per hour.
What's driving this project?
Well, I think Craig is probably a better guy.
Why don't they just put in a stoplight?
So,
Nothing else, it's repaving the road.
I think if we look at that intersection, and yeah, if you think that heading south, going from a stop sign, and 50 feet from that stop sign, you hit a yield sign, where you're yielding to a slip lane, is a good intersection. It is not something that we see as a good intersection, and something that's long range viable to move traffic through that area. So at this point, this is the best possible solution to move traffic through that intersection with the problems that we have out there. And I wish Chief Moody was here, but he could speak to the amount of crashes that we have down in that area.
You don't have those available? Those statistics available?
Yeah, we do. We actually do have those available. We could share those with you. Yeah, for anybody who would like to see those, we certainly could share those with you.
And I too would like to just remind you again that the safety performance is much better with this roundabout than you get with your yield, stop, combination, traffic signal. People still run through red lights. There's no maintenance costs. The service life here with your volumes are going to last for quite a long time. So I think it would be a really, really beneficial feature to your community, in my opinion.
I'm sure you've been quiet too long.
Yes.
What are the time frames when you're going to do the Olympic Highway and the Alder? You're not going to do them at the same time, right?
No, it will be done in phases.
Okay.
And really more by blocks than large-scale closures. The hill section is going to be a little difficult just because obviously if you start in a certain area in that hill section, it's likely that there are going to be detours and delays on that roadway. But when you're down on that lower section, it's certainly, we're going to try to not impact traffic the best that we can. The one thing to keep in mind is this is not the only project that is going to be going on this spring and summer moving forward into 2019. From Alder Street north in downtown Shelton, we have a bid out right now for the Sewer Basin 3 project. So there will be a sewer basin project going on basically in this same area at the same time for construction. So downtown Shelton, anywhere north, Alder Street north is going to be fairly congested and have a lot of equipment and construction going on in those areas for about the next 12 to 18 months. So this is a fairly large 2 projects, and the construction period on them is just over a year is what it's proposed for both of them right now, with the Basin 3 project slated to start sometime in mid-March to early April, and this project sometime most likely in April.
This gentleman had a question.
Okay, I'm the Mikiso owner, and I had that building about 30 years. And I look at that as is right now, I don't seem to be any, accident over there, the car accident at that area. And then if you guys put them on a roundabout, then we're going to be having a lot of, heck of traffic on the North Cliff and then down the Olympic Highway, because about around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, is all the lots of cars coming down. That totally blocked my entry for whole hour almost.
So you should be happy with this project. This is
Not
one
really.
thing that will, this is one thing that will move traffic through that
If
intersection.
roundabout there, then there is only one lane also, that is going to be more traffic.
And people are gonna stop.
Right now, people, they don't have enough much traffic right now.
So Brian, maybe you can speak to this. So right now, the issue that we've got in the PM peak hour, which is basically right after school, we get a backup from on that north side, basically from the intersection. It usually extends about 1,000 feet back up the road. So maybe you can talk about traffic flow through that intersection instead of the stop sign into a yield sign on that intersection.
I'll do my best, but I think it's a good question. This is all about traffic operations, and I think that the one thing about this queue that's developing here is many of these people are taking less. It doesn't change with the roundabout. These are taking less. But keep in mind, when you approach a roundabout, you have to yield to anybody that potentially could conflict with you. So you're going to see a process here where it only takes one car to do this or one car to do this, and you actually stop the flow here. That allows these gaps to show up. And the modeling is actually pretty sophisticated. We have looked at, literally, there are 5,500 roundabouts in the United States, and they follow a fairly common model that we got out of Australia about 20 years ago. And the consultants, as well as the city that run the model, we looked it over. There are gaps. You won't see the 1,000-foot queue. This is the one thing about stop signs. If you think about a stop sign, how many of you pull up and you're the second car in line? You feel like you have to stop because it's the law. But keep in mind, from a yield standpoint, you can flow on into the roundabout. You don't spend all that time stopping and then starting again. And if we think about signals, the reason signals are a little less efficient in certain volume ranges is because you're losing a lot of startup lost time because you're bringing everybody to stop. So ultimately, you build more lanes to get the signals to work a little bit better. Roundabouts can operate up to a threshold pretty well before they start to have some issues, and then explain why we would move on to a second or a second circulating lane or a secondary lane. I hope I haven't gone into too much details, but this queue will disappear for the most part. Now, it might not be the day it opens, but within 6 months, we're going to have people pretty well trained about how to yield and take gaps.
Are you going to give new driveways to the businesses right there?
His only access is on that side.
Well, there's one on the other side too, but are you going to give them one from Alder onto?
Are you talking about Mickey's Deli?
Yeah.
Yes, we have addressed that, and we are proposing a new entrance on both ends, on First Street and on Second Street.
Yes.
We're going to widen those out, move them just a touch closer to the intersection to make the delivery trucks a little more accessible into and out of. Right now, what we've seen down there is the delivery trucks will literally drive north on First Street, and then they will just drive across the sidewalk to get into that parking lot, which has destroyed our sidewalks down there. So we have moved those entrances a little closer to the intersections at Second and First and widened them out a little bit, so it should be much easier to get in and out
and made them to where cars don't bottom out.
The Mickey's Deli, teriyaki, Kobe teriyaki area. Yeah.
Other than the flow of traffic, did I do something over there ask if you had a record of the accidents that are taking place over the past 25 years? Yeah. Is that brought up over there?
I don't know if we have 25 years worth of crash data, but yes, we do have crash data, and we also have traffic volume data also. Yes.
And where do I see that?
We can certainly share that. We will try, this entire presentation will be on the City of Shelton website as of tomorrow. So you will be able to take a look at that. And we will get with Chief Moody, and we will get some of that crash data, and we will try to insert it also on the website. Yes.
One of the reasons for that long queue coming down North Cliff Hill is that people come to the stop sign And you can't trust that someone with no blinker is going to go straight through. And so people will sit at the stop sign while traffic goes straight through and up the hill, waiting till it's clear. And so if you don't have to wait, if you can just go on the roundabout, I don't think the queue will be nearly as long.
I appreciate that. I think
Because they don't know what
you have a pretty good feel for that operations.
Yes.
I just have a question about how you're gonna, start the project, because you say going up the hill is gonna be difficult. So are you gonna do the roundabout first so that the traffic can come down North Cliff when you're working on the Olympic Highway?
So one thing that we have with our contractors is we can't specify where they start or where they finish with a project. So that will be completely up to the contractor of how they navigate through this entire project, whether it be starting on one end, ending on the other, or doing sections at a time. But that is something that will be driven by the contractor that we bring on to construct this. Yes?
To speak to that last question, though, we will make sure one is done before the other starts.
Yes.
Okay, well, I gotta say, I appreciate PUD3 for explaining the necessity of keeping the poles the way they are. That really kind of reasons into why this plan is the way it is. And I like it a lot for a lot of different reasons. And I agree. For me, as somebody who's driven on this for so many years, I have to say, I notice that traffic comes in surges. You have a surge coming down First Street, when the light opens up at Railroad, and you get a surge coming down Alder as the light opens up there at 7th, and you get a surge coming down from North Cliff as the light opens up at the top of the hill. When these things all come in, you get a surge, and you get this train of traffic that gets the right of way, and that gets them out of the way. It flows them. Once they go past this circle, they've gone through, another surge comes through, and I think this is a beautiful solution, and I think you guys have done a great job in considering your old plan and then totally turn around and coming up with this. I applaud you for not being stuck in the mud with what the original thing was, because I think you were going there, and this shows that you listened to the people at the last meeting and you came around and you did your homework. Thank you for that, whether it goes to
So unless there are any other technical questions, we certainly will be around to answer any of those individual questions if you have any. Like I said, this presentation will be on the City of Shelton website at some point tomorrow. We will get some of that crash data out there from Chief Moody and also put that on the website. So I appreciate everybody for coming. I know that it is not always the best to come out and see a presentation like this, but we certainly appreciate the feedback that we have gotten and look forward to a very successful project moving forward.
Thank you.